Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 5th day of March, 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got the hazardous weather graphic. There we go. And we've got the west coast there illuminated in the watch color, and that's for a winter storm watch actually goes into effect, let's see, for Sunday night, or for Sunday and Sunday night. So it starts 6 a.m. Sunday actually and extends until 6 a.m. Monday, so Sunday and Sunday night. And that's for a possible blizzard to hit the area there, looking for winds of 55 miles an hour with another active front moving in, anywhere from 3 to 5 inches of snow falling across the entire area there, especially St. Lawrence Island and into the Bering Strait coast there, southern Seward Peninsula. Some areas could see as much as 8 inches by Monday morning. And that's it as far as watches and advisories go, or warnings around the state. So satellite imagery showing that strong front that brought the strong winds, whiteout conditions, and heavy snow to the west coast yesterday, really washing out as it moves inland, stretching out just a narrow band of the denser clouds there, but areas of snow extended from Cook Inlet and up across the Kuskokwim Valley. Some areas McGrath picking up anywhere from a few inches of snow there, and same thing at Kodiak. They had a couple inches of snow, kind of more of a wet snow than what McGrath had or northern Kuskokwim Valley, but areas of snow extended up to the northwest along that front as it moves slowly eastward, but the whole system really washing out. And then another system there bringing some rain to the southeast coast. Amounts not too heavy and a little gusty on the winds there. Cape Decision had winds gusting to about 32 miles an hour, while Huna picked up just under an inch of precipitation. That was kind of the standout. Otherwise, by comparison, about 15 hundredths at Sitka and just a couple hundredths at Juneau. Their winds gusting about 25 miles an hour out of the east-southeast, and only 5/100ths of an inch at AKwx. So not too big of a storm there, really weak. That one also weakening as it drifts northward along the coast there. And also out over the northwest winds behind that front, bringing the colder air back in. Kodiak lower to mid-30s throughout the afternoon with the snowfall. And snow has stopped there now. Winds now gusting 25 to 30 miles an hour to the northwest. Temperature back down to 30 degrees as colder air moves in. And even stronger winds out over the Alaska Peninsula, Cold Bay, snow and blowing snow due to the gusty winds to 52 miles an hour, and the temperature right around freezing there. Cape Romanzoff up on the Yukon Delta coast saw gusts 40 miles an hour, and then westerlies out over the Aleutians pretty brisk at 45 miles an hour for peak wind gusts at Adak from the west-southwest there as another system pushes eastward, just about to move into the Pribilofs and Fox Islands. On the chart, you can see really a series of troughs in that westerly flow out over the Bering Sea with snow showers or rain and snow showers there, with the gusty winds down to the Aleutians, and northwest winds now at that low center pulling east of Kodiak, coming into the area there with the colder air shutting off the snow, and that weak front with a narrow band of light snow along that this afternoon really washed out. Snow and blowing snow really not a factor anymore up St. Lawrence Island along the northwest coast. It's so weak. And then weak high pressure kept it dry and variably cloudy over the eastern central interior, from the eastern Arctic coast all the way down. There was clear sky, sunshine, eastern North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound today. And then that weak low off the southeast coast, keeping it unsettled and damp with rain and snow. And for tonight, that'll taper off, but won't end completely. You'll hold on to a chance of rain and snow showers across much of the panhandle. Some areas probably will end over the inland areas. That next system drops off, continues to drop off to the southeast there, but a weak trough eastern North Gulf Coast from the Gulf of Alaska will bring a chance of maybe some snow showers into Yakutat, but amounts will be light, as well as eastern North Gulf Coast. Remnants of that front tonight over Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet produces a chance of light snow at times, definitely cloudy skies, and flurries could extend all the way up into the northern Kuskokwim Valley and into the central interior, possibly Nenana, maybe Fairbanks, but that whatever falls will be quite light. Winds will be light over the interior to the Arctic coast, and that weak low will keep light snow going over much of the southwest interior into Bristol Bay, and rain and snow with diminishing winds for the Alaska Peninsula. And looks like periods of snow or rain and snow mixed with the Pribilofs with west-southwest winds, possibly gusting 35 miles an hour. And for Saturday, we've got that warm front now pushing with that southwest flow over the Bering Sea, the low over the far western Bering Sea there, just east of Kamchatka Peninsula, higher pressure south of the eastern Aleutians. So that's going to pull warmer air up. It looks like possibly mixed precipitation reaching the southwest coast tomorrow afternoon. Maybe some drifting snow over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta with some of that moisture, but just lingering snow showers up toward the Noatak Valley and Seward Peninsula, as well as maybe some leftover moisture for some light snow shower possibilities, eastern interior down into, again, Kenai Peninsula and the Talkeetnas. And partly sunny skies, Copper River Basin, still rain and snow showers and unsettled for the panhandle, but winds will be light and precipitation amounts quite light as well. And then for Sunday, there's that front, brings the tighter gradient and blowing snow back into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, especially the Yukon Delta northward across the Seward Peninsula into the northwest coast, Kotzebue Sound. Winds gusting 55 miles an hour, 3 to 5 inches of snow by Monday morning. So another round of near blizzard conditions there, or blizzard conditions, but not a different story for the central eastern interior. High pressure and light winds and dry conditions, a little on the cool side, definitely below zero in the eastern and northern interior, and mostly sunny possibly for the northern panhandle. Lingering chance of the snow showers, say from Petersburg on down to Stewart and Hyder, but dry for the most part. And looking at the lows down there tonight, upper 20s north to mid 30s south, and in the mid-teens, mid to upper teens, south central Alaska, 5 below Copper River Basin, single numbers Bristol Bay, mid 20s Kodiak Island, and 5 to 10 below Tanana Valley, central interior to maybe 20 below over the Yukon Flats North Slope, eastern Arctic coast, and 5 below St. Lawrence Island, single numbers Yukon Delta, upper 20s to mid 30s for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, followed by highs tomorrow, upper 30s, lower 40s for the Panhandle, 20s south central Alaska, teens Copper River Basin, upper 20s Bristol Bay, and mid-teens for the central interior, down to 5 to 10 for the Yukon Flats, Brooks Range, North Slope, near zero on the Arctic coast, a little above, little below, depending on where you are, lower 40s Alaska Peninsula, central Aleutians, and then the lows for Sunday morning, teens along the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, homer to Seward, and single numbers to call it 5 below to 10 above for your lows for south central Alaska, and about the same for the Copper River Basin up into the interior, still below zero but not too far below, and above zero St. Lawrence Island. That'll be followed by highs in the 40s for the Panhandle, 20 southern Alaska, up near 20 in the Tanana Valley, and above zero even for the Arctic coast, and upper 30s to lower 40s for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. With the southwest coast, you can see temperatures getting above freezing right into the southwest interior, 30 to 35 for the highs, and ADAC maybe around 40.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
I'm meteorologist Peter Chan with the National Weather Service in Anchorage. Here's your flying weather for the upcoming weekend. Well, on Saturday morning, there'll still be some pockets of lingering IFR conditions in the southeast peninsula, as well as from the Kenai Peninsula on up into parts of the Alaska Range. More importantly, to the west, though, we'll start to see an area of expanding IFR conditions along the west coast and in the Bering Sea in response to a low-pressure and frontal system that'll be moving across that area this weekend. By Saturday afternoon, some of the IFR conditions in south central will start to shrink. Areas of the southeast, though, could see an expansion a little bit. And then along the west coast, a warm front will be lifting northward, so that'll produce a broad area of IFR conditions. And as we head into Sunday, warm front will have lifted farther north up toward the Chukchi Sea, with a cold front sweeping across the eastern Aleutians, bringing a broad area of IFR conditions. And by Sunday afternoon, the cold front will be approaching the mainland of the west, as well as the beginnings of the Alaska Peninsula. Past conditions on Saturday are looking good. VFR conditions across much of the north and east. Anaktuvuk, as well as Atigun, will be VFR. Farther southeast, both Lake Clark and Merrill will enjoy VFR conditions throughout the day, as will Rainy Pass. However, as you get up toward Windy Pass, there's that little narrow sliver of some IFR, VFR, and VFR conditions that will kind of linger around there, so that could impact Windy Pass on Saturday. But farther east, both Isabel and Metasta will be VFR, and then heading back toward the southwest, Tanita, VFR, and Portage will be on the borderline with VFR conditions, especially to the east of Portage. However, IFR conditions may linger on the west end of Portage Pass on Saturday. And farther east, stubborn IFR conditions will linger, especially at the southern entrances of both Chilkoot and White Passes. Freezing levels on Saturday morning will be down near the surface, the coastal mountains of the southeast, on up toward just off of the Kenai Peninsula, and then coming back inland across the tip of the Alaska Peninsula out into the central Bering Sea. Slightly higher freezing levels of 2,000 to 4,000 feet will exist near and south of the southern Aleutians, as briefly milder southerly flow develops ahead of the approaching cold front way out there. Icing will be confined mainly between 4,000 and 12,000 feet. Across parts of southeast Alaska, as well as the Kenai Peninsula and the Alaska Range and the North Slope. Also, a broad area of above 4,000 feet icing potential exists in western Alaska, the Alaska Peninsula, and much of the Bering Sea on Saturday. Upper level jet stream winds for Saturday have relaxed over eastern and south central areas, including the Yukon, but they're still in the far northwest Arctic coast, 60 to 85 knot winds from the south. And then along the western coast, northwesterly winds of 70 to 75 knots. And you can see off to the lower left that upper level jet core of 130 knots way out there southwest of the western Aleutians. 9,000 foot level winds show a circulation in the Gulf of Alaska, and southerly winds of 30 to 40 knots, impacting mainly British Columbia from Graham Island up to maybe about Ketchikan. Further west, northerly winds at Kodiak Island and over at least the beginning of the Alaska Peninsula, 50 to 70 knot northerly winds aloft, while a broad area of 40 to 50 knot winds moving onshore through western areas, and much of the Bering Sea covered with 60 to near 70 knot, 9,000 foot level winds. The 3,000 foot level shows a circulation continuing there in the Gulf of Alaska with southeast to southerly winds of 45 to 50 knots, Graham Island up to about Ketchikan. And then out toward the west, we are seeing westerly winds of 45 knots moving onshore into western areas with a very broad area of 50 to 60 knot winds covering much of the western half of the Bering Sea. And that leaves the potential for turbulence, especially along the Aleutian chain up into the southwest portion of the Alaska Peninsula, with a few pockets below 4,000 in the west and also in the southeast.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and today I'm privileged to introduce Dr. Uccellini, the Director of the United States National Weather Service. Welcome back to Alaska, sir.
Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Prior to being the leader of the National Weather Service, your work included an extensive look at snowstorms across the northeastern United States. These are the types of storms that can bring some of the country's largest cities to its knees. Tell me a little bit about your fascination with snow.
Well, as far back as I can remember, I've always been interested in weather, growing up as a kid on Long Island, New York, and was particularly fascinated by snowstorms. why they occurred. The distribution of snow was very varied across the entire region. The rain-snow line, all those things fascinated me right from the get-go. And I was interested in knowing how they worked, how the forecast worked, or more often than not, didn't work one way or the other. And that drove me, that interest continued to build and drove me through high school right into college, wanting to be a meteorologist.
Okay, that's a fascinating story, and I think every meteorologist has a weather story like that in some way.
Right.
Due to Alaska's size and proximity to the North Pole, sometimes it's difficult to detect and analyze the weather patterns over Alaska. What's the National Weather Service doing to improve that weather detection?
Well, observations in this type of environment is a big challenge, whether it's from space or from what we call in situ observations from the ground or within the systems. Clearly, satellites have been playing an increasing role in providing the big picture, not only from a visual sense and what you see is occurring, but also from providing the data for numerical models that then are used to actually predict the weather. Alaska is actually pretty well positioned with respect to polar orbiting satellites, since you get a faster return of those satellites over your particular area. And in fact, the polar satellite system is the backbone for the observations that we use in our models, especially our global models, and they're particularly important for observing weather features that affect Alaska.
Alaskans live and die by the weather every day, and one of the strategic goals of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Weather Service is to develop a more weather-ready nation. What does it mean for Alaskans to be weather-ready?
Well, the strategic outcome is based on people being ready, responsive, and therefore resilient to the increasing threats to extreme weather events. Those threats are related to not only the nature of the events, but the fact that we're becoming more vulnerable to them as we have more people, more infrastructure that could be affected by these events. So we have to ensure that the observations we make for situational awareness, the forecasts we make for people to take the proper responses, are connected to people's actions, the response to these events, so that they will be more resilient to what's facing them. There are examples with respect to hurricanes. More people living along the coastline takes longer to evacuate. We have to make better forecasts with longer lead times, but we also have to communicate the threat so people will actually take action to avoid those storms. Up here you have, as in other parts of the United States, an increasing threat related to fire. As there are more people living in fire-prone areas, we have to ensure that our forecasts are good, that we don't have false alarms that make people not react to the forecast when in fact they should. But we also have to be able to communicate the threat and make sure that we're working with the partners in the emergency management community so that communities and right down to individuals will actually take the proper responses in the face of these events. So that's the strategic goal. There are a lot of challenges for us in terms of improving forecasts, but also improving our communication skills and linking with the emergency management communities that are actually out there trying to protect lives and mitigate property loss.
So a huge partnership effort going forward.
That's one of the important keys for the success of meeting the strategic goal.
Okay. One of the things you're talking about was understanding the weather information we're getting back from the computers, weather modeling, and you did a lot of work with that in some of your prior positions with the Environmental Prediction Center there, the National Center for Environmental Prediction. What can you tell us about recent improvements in that weather modeling? And you were using the polar orbiters as kind of a source of information that started that process.
Well, first of all, we have to recognize that everything you see, you read and hear about weather, climate, or ocean forecasts are all driven by numerical models. Now, it really has been the revolution in our forecast process in the last part of the 20th century. The success of that numerical enterprise is based on three factors: big computers, global data, not just local data, but you have to have a global data set. And then the models themselves, the science that's behind the models and in running the models in an operational mode. So we're working to improve all three of those components. We upgraded our computers last year. We're going through another upgrade even as I speak. We'll be upgrading from 200 trillion calculations per second to 700 trillion calculations per second by January of 2015. This increase in the computer will allow us to run what we call Earth system models. It's not just the atmosphere, it's the atmosphere, ocean, ice, which is obviously very important up here, and land models that are all coupled together at higher resolution. So you need the big computers, you need the science that allows us to run these models and run them in a parallel mode, and that they're coupled so that the ocean effects could affect the atmosphere and vice versa, as an example. And then the global observations are absolutely critical, and over the last 20, 30 years they've become more dependent upon the satellite systems, and especially the polar orbiting satellites, which help drive the observations needed for those models, whether they be atmospheric observations, land, ice observations. We're deriving more and more of that from satellites now that feed into these models and produce forecasts with extended lead times. Now out, for extreme events especially, we're seeing much improved forecast out in the 4, 5, 6, 7, and even 8-day range, which gets us back to Weather Ready Nation, because if you're going to get ready for a storm event, you want those consistent forecasts approaching that event from day 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, so you can take the actions several days in advance that can help mitigate the property loss and protect your livelihood.
Okay, all part of the mission of protecting life and property. Dr. Uccellini, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and speaking to Alaskans and sharing how the National Weather Service is working for Alaska and the nation. Wish you safe travels around the 49th. Enjoy your time here, sir. And for Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Back looking at the sea ice analysis today, about where it normally would be roughly this time of the year from Bristol Bay there out just south of St. Matthew Island, a little more than just south of St. Matthew Island, and of course not much change over Cook Inlet or Kamishak Bay. And for the coastal water forecast, small craft advisories on the south coast of the Panhandle, east southeast 25 knots, southeast 15 to 20 knots on the north coast, central northern inside waters. You're looking at southeast winds, 15 knots, 3-foot seas, and 20-knot winds from the southeast for Clarence Strait. And then moving on to Sunday, northerly winds come back into the forecast for Lincoln Glacier Bay as well as Stevens Passage. Both at 25 knots, seas build a little bit up to 5 feet, and then Clarence Strait, winds are down to 10 knots from the southeast. And for the south coast, kind of a light wind pattern there along the coastline, 10 to 15 knots, varying from east to north. Actually, the central coast, northerlies 10 to 15 knots, 10-foot seas, 15 out of the east on the south coast, and light northeast winds at 10 on the north coast. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, low breezy, northwest 30 sustained, seas 4 feet, north 20 there for the eastern North Gulf Coast, gusts 45 knots out of the Copper River Delta, northwest 30 knots, small craft advisories, western North Gulf Coast, and a good gale for the Barren Islands out of the northwest at 40 knots, and minimum gales for Kamishak Bay, northwesterlies 35, and north-northwest 10 to 20 knots for Cook Inlet with seas in the ice-free areas up to 4 feet. And then northeast winds 10 to 15 knots for Cook Inlet on Sunday, with northeast winds at 20 for Kamishak Bay. Small craft advisories down from the gales on Saturday for the Barren Islands, west 25, and North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, not too bad, north 15 with seas 6 feet, except in the Sound it'll be 2 feet or less. Kodiak Island, gales on the east side of the island tomorrow, northwest 35, and small craft advisory Shelikof Strait, 40-knot northwest winds from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, and 30 knots Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev out of the west. And westerly gales on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, 35 knots, 17-foot seas, and northwest at 40 for Bristol Bay with seas at 9 feet. And then for Sundays, Alaska Peninsula, gale warnings, south 40 to 45 knots, strongest on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, with seas around 13 to 14 feet, and southeast winds at 30 knots for Bristol Bay, 30 knots from the south from Castle Cape to Sitkinak. Otherwise, Shelikof Strait east at 20, west at 20 on the east side Kodiak. And for Unalaska Island tomorrow, small craft advisories, westerly, sustained 30 knots, and Unmak Island, southwest 25 to 30 knots, Adak and Atka, south-southwest at 30 knots with 13 to 18 foot seas, and gale warnings on Chitka Peninsula, 35 knot winds from the southwest and 45 knot winds from Kiska to Shimia, out of the south with seas at around 22 feet. And then those will drop off and will become westerly and drop off down to 30 knots out of the west for the area from Shimia to Kiska. And Chitka Island, southwest 30 knots, Adak and Atka, west-southwest 30 knots. And then for the Fox Islands, 45 knot winds, mostly from the southwest, seas running 15 to 17 feet. And for the southwest coast, gale warnings on the Yukon Delta coast there, north of Nunivak Island, southerlies 35 knots. 45 knot southwest winds for the northern Bering Sea, and the Pribilofs, minimum gales 35 from the southwest, 25 knots. First wind advisories, Norton Sound, southeast winds there, Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island. And that picks up full gales there for the Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island area at 40 knots from the south, 45 knots along the Yukon Delta, Kuskokwim Delta coastline, southwest 45 for the Pribilofs, and southwest 40 for St. Matthew Island. Central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east or east-southeast winds. On the light side, only at about 10 knots, and then southerlies at 15 for the western Arctic coast, Cape Beaufort to Cape Lisbon, or Cape Beaufort to Cape Lisbon, Cape Thompson, either one, south 20 knots, and then southeast 15 there on down to Wales. Outlook for Sunday, big increase in those winds, up to 45, just under storm force, going with 45 out of the southeast from Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort. And brisk wind advisories for the remainder of the Arctic coast from the east, on the east side, 25 to 30, central and west side, southeast at 30 knots. And for tonight, some lingering snow over with remnants of that frontal boundary, Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, Manuska Valley, or the Susitna Valley, more than the Manuska Valley, possibly to Denali Park into maybe Nanana, but those will be real light amounts, and a weak system brings snow into the southwest areas. And that's all I've got time.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.